Hello, fellow book readers. My name is John, and today I'm going to go over my September monthly reading wrap up. In September, I was doing standalone September, so I only read standalone fantasy books, and in standalone September, I read 19 books. Some of them were long. Some of them were short. Some were just like middle length. There was only, I would say, one like super long book, but we'll get to that. This is going to be sort of like quick reviews of each because most of these books I went over in my weekly reading recaps for the month. But the last week and a half, I did not make a weekly reading recap for the past week and a half because I had some migraine problems that I'm still kind of having. I don't even know if I should be filming today, but I am. Those books, the last 5 books I'll talk about a little bit more in depth, but the first 14 books, a little bit shorter, I would say. And as always, there will be spoilers when I talk about these books. So I started off September by reading The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I gave that book 3.5 stars. I thought it was very good. It's an atmospheric fantasy, but the thing is, you don't have to like the circus to like it because I'm not like a big circus person. As a matter of fact, I kind of hate the circus. I was terrified of clowns as a child. But through this book, I grew to love the circus. Like, I loved the circus aspect of it. The setting and the atmosphere were just so good. It's about, like, this duel between our two protagonists, our male protagonist and our female protagonist. And the thing is, it's their mentors that are making them duel. And what we don't know is that the winner of this duel lives and the loser dies. And it's not they're both magicians, so they both have magic, but it's not a duel it's not like a traditional duel. It's how they run the circus. So their job is to run the circus, and it's like which method is a better way to run the circus, from the outside or the inside. And that's sort of how we do things, because these two mentors, they have like different philosophies on life. It's very interesting, very good. The reason it's not great, the reason I didn't give it 4 stars, because like I said, 3.5 stars is a very good book for me. The reason I didn't give it 4 stars is because there's sort of this time thing going on where there's this one point of view in 1902 and the other point of view, other two point of view characters are in 1892, and you have to wait for them to catch up to 1902 before anything major happens, and you know that while you're reading it. There's no real fix for that problem because the 1902 character is younger and they have to be younger, so you kind of had it. The author kind of had to do it that way, but it did make for sort of a lackluster reading experience because you knew nothing major was going to happen until the protagonist caught up to 1902. That being said, still very good. Okay, and the next book I read was Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. I gave this book 4 stars. I think it's a great book. Really good introduction to fantasy, I would say, in general. Like, it's very, very young adult. I wouldn't call it middle grade. It's young adult. And I think it's also probably a good introduction to Stephen King because he has a very unique writing style in terms of the way he writes prose. It all works. It's all good. The story is simple, but the characters are really easy to root for. I think Peter's a great character. Flag is one of the best antagonists I've read this year. One of the best characters I read this month, too. And the story is Hamlet meets Rapunzel. That is the story, and he does a good job of combining those two stories in a very satisfying way. Is the end a little predictable? Sure. I think the climax is definitely worse than the first 200-ish pages, but it's a short book, very quick to read, very good pacing. Great book from front to back, in my opinion. Okay, then I read The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. This is my book of the month. I gave it 5 stars. This book rules. It's sort of an atmospheric fantasy because it takes place in Alaska, and the atmosphere is a big part of it. It has major influences from the Russian fairy tale The Snow Child, which it's obviously named after, and sort of tells that story in a different way. I will say it's barely a fantasy. It's very low fantasy. There's hints of magic. In the end, we don't even know if the Snow Child herself was magic or not. We have no idea. And the end doesn't just spoon feed you the end, which I love, but it gives you enough hints where you can guess at it. And we'll get to another book later that I talk about that doesn't give you enough hints, in my opinion. I really love the characters here. I love the magic of the story, even though it's very low. I love the theming of the story. The theming is just very, very powerful and in your face about it, but not too in your face. And yeah, just the atmosphere. The atmosphere is awesome. And that's another thing I've noticed about this month in standalone September is that the atmosphere in these standalone books, they really stand out. They really jump up another level. Yeah, can't recommend this book enough. It's one of my favorite books I've ever read in terms of standalone fantasy. Okay, then I read The Sorcerer's Legacy by Janny Wurts. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I think it's very good. What I'll say about it is this book is epic fantasy from front to back. She writes very 80s style epic fantasy prose. In the beginning, you're dumped in an epic fantasy. There's no doubt about it from the beginning to the end. And she does a good job of sort of blending other subgenres of fantasy, because it kind of starts out as a portal fantasy, and then it turns into sort of a sword and sorcery type fantasy, and it in the end has like romantasy vibes before romantasy was a thing, but all of it's wrapped up in an epic fantasy with like epic fantasy prose, and it just really works. It has a great twist ending that you probably won't see coming, and the two main characters are very easy to root for. Now, my main problem with this book is that it has some sort of time travel elements to it, and I'm just not a big time travel person, so that bothered me just a little bit. And again, that's just sort of personal. That's not like an objective criticism of the book. It's just personal. I don't love the time travel elements of this book, or just time travel elements in generally speaking. And also, the world building was so big and so vast, but the book is kind of short, and I think it's paced really well. But since she tried to shove so much world building in, it felt a little bit shallow. But that's not like a main problem, because you can see the breadcrumbs down that, she's a great world builder. You can tell, give her a longer book, which almost all of her other books are way longer than this book. There's going to be some great world building. So I can't recommend Janny Wurts enough. Great stuff. I can't wait to read some of her other standalones. I think she has 2 others, and I will definitely be reading them at some point. Okay, then I read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This was my least favorite book of the month. I gave it 1 star. I kind of actively hated most of my time reading this book. I think it has real genre problems. Like, you can't decide if it's a historical fiction and a fantasy, and that's normally not a problem because those 2 genres generally blend well together. But here, they just sort of bounced off each other. She couldn't find the way to blend them together, in my opinion. And I don't even know who to recommend this book for, because to me, it's not a fantasy or a historical fiction. It's just sort of neither instead of being both. And that's a real issue for me here. I also thought the characters just were not good. Like, I liked Valentina, but she was not one of the main characters. She was a side character. She was very good, but the 2 main characters in general, I didn't think were great. And the end was very predictable, which is normally not a problem for me. If you listen to my other videos, I think ends that you can predict are generally just because they're foreshadowed very well. But here, with the story lacking all the way through, I was hoping for sort of a bigger ending than we got. It just didn't happen. So yeah, this is a 1-star book, and I hate to say that because I really do like Leigh Bardugo's other work. I think the Grishaverse is awesome. Okay, next up was my only reread of the month. This is a book I read way back in 1999, I think, maybe the year 2000. The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. I read it as a child. I think this book still holds up. Even as a middle grade fantasy, you can read it as an adult. It's got great humor, great theming, great messaging, great characters, a great story. And it's short with great artwork and a beautiful map. It's one of my favorite fantasy maps of all time. Right here, I love this map. Just super good. It's the first map I ever saw as a child, like fictional, like fake map in a fantasy, and I fell in love immediately. I can't recommend it enough. 4 stars. It's great. I can't quite say it's a perfect book because, it is just sort of simple, but it's simple in all the right way. And if you're not reading middle grade as an adult, then you probably should give it a shot. There's still, again, I say this every video, explore every subgenre of fantasy. They all have good stuff. Okay, the next up was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This book was near perfect. I gave it 4.5 stars. Piranesi as a character is so innocent and so easy to root for. He's my favorite character of the month by far. Love Piranesi, the character. I loved the beginning of this book with all the world building and the lore and like sort of the wondering what's the mystery that's going on in this labyrinth that Piranesi is stuck in. I love the other character named The Other, just because I could tell right away this character was not good. And it paid off in all the right ways at the end. Did I think the climax wasn't as strong as the beginning? Yes. But then I thought, like, post-climax, like, is Piranesi going to stay in this labyrinth? And I thought he was. And he leaves the labyrinth. I was so happy. It worked so well. Susanna Clarke tricked me. But yeah, she just has a very unique writing style, and it's very easy to read, very good. Can't recommend this book enough. 4.5 stars. Okay, next up was Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This was the book that I was most trepidatious going into the month to read. Like, I did not think it was going to deliver quite as much as it did. I ended up loving it. I gave it 4 stars. It's a great book. It has a fairy tale vibe to it. In the beginning, I didn't think there was going to be much magic. I was just about this girl that could like hustle her way to turn silver into gold. And yeah, it turns out, no, there's tons of magic. There's an ice kingdom with a fairy king, where I was dropped like right in the middle of this epic fairy tale in the middle of like my fantasy, and it worked so well. And the demon and that could spew fire, and the end was very satisfying. So yeah, 4 stars. Okay, the next up was Circe by Madeline Miller. I love this book. I give it 4 stars, but I do like Greek mythology a lot. If you don't like Greek mythology, I don't necessarily know that you're going to love this book. But for me, it really worked, and I think she found a way to make the tale of Circe, who was stuck on an island for 80% of the book, maybe, fun. And she sort of combines all these different legends. I mean, obviously you get Odysseus. You're going to know that story from the Odyssey, except this is from Circe's point of view, and it's a lot more expanded, I would say. But you get other legends thrown in there as well, mixed in with her time there, and it has a very satisfying, good ending. Circe as a character herself, very easy to root for, very good character. Yeah, can't recommend this enough. Great. I think it's great, 4 stars, and I look forward to reading Song of Achilles by Adeline Miller, because I do think she does a very good job with the Greek mythology, and she nailed the gods in a way that I wasn't sure she was going to be able to. She does make them great characters, which is perfect. That's what you want. Okay, then next up was The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. This book was just too weird for me. Yeah, I didn't enjoy the weirdness about it at all. I thought the story was very original. It had a good concept. And if you pitched me the story, I'd be like, oh yeah, hell yeah. Which is why I was in, because I had so many people recommend me this book. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to include this in my standalone September now that I know what it's about. But then I actually read it, and I didn't so much love the way he went about not telling the story, but writing the story. It was just very, very strange. And look, it's going to work for a lot of people. I get that. Some people want their books to be strange like that. I did not. I just didn't enjoy the characters, the way they talked. There was too much profanity, and I don't have a problem with that. Crescent City 1 is filled with profanity, but I think it makes sense and it seems real in that book. And in this book, it felt phony and fake. Pet peeve of mine is fake conversation voice, and that's kind of how a lot of these characters talk. These characters just didn't seem real to me. I thought the end was good, but I just didn't care about any of the characters because they were just too weird, too strange for me. So this isn't a bad book. I didn't hate my time here, but for me it was just okay at best, or even just fine at best. I gave it 2 stars. Okay, then next up was Watermoon by Samantha Sotto Yambao. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right, and I apologize if it is wrong. But I really did enjoy this book. It's a portal fantasy, and I thought it delivered on what it was trying to do. The magic in here was really good. It was another one of those atmospheric fantasies. The atmosphere here was beautiful. The setting was just grand and great. I thought the mystery of it all was very good. It had 3 twists, and I think they all worked really well. Maybe even 4 twists, you can argue. And again, they all worked really well. I did think the climax lacked a little bit of action that I thought it was going to deliver on. So that's my one main criticism of this book, which is why I gave it 3.5 stars instead of 4 stars. Just because again, the climax just didn't quite hit how I wanted it to. I also thought the romance was a little bit too sudden, which didn't bother me that much, but I thought it could have been more developed, if that makes sense. But overall, yeah, still a very good book, 3.5 stars. And read it for the atmosphere and the magic and the twists alone. Those 3 things all deliver in ways that you can't ignore. Okay, then next up was A Song to Drown Rivers by Liang. I thought this was very good. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's the legend of Xishi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and I apologize for not, but she's one of the 4 ancient Chinese beauties, and I didn't know anything about this legend coming into this book, so the end of this book shocked me, actually shocked me what happened. Perhaps I should have saw it coming, because, the title of the book sort of gives it away. I don't know how I didn't see it coming, but I didn't see it coming, and it was a tragic twist, but it worked in all the right ways. But then the author somehow manages to end the book on sort of a happy, upbeat note. I really enjoyed that about it. I actually really loved all the characters in this book. I thought, there was one death that happened earlier in the book that I thought was going to be the big thing, and that was very sad. And I even enjoyed the evil king, not the second evil king, the first evil king, because she wrote him in a way that you can be sympathetic towards him, and in the end I was rooting for him not to die. I really liked Xishi and him sort of together, their character interactions. I did think family could have been developed more as a character. I wish he appeared more in the book, if that makes sense. I understood why he couldn't, but I think there could have been a way to do it. And that's kind of my one issue with the book. I thought the pacing was just a little bit too quick. It wasn't bad pacing by any stretch, but I did think she could have slowed it down just a tiny bit, which is why I gave it 3.5 stars instead of 4. Still very good, though. Okay, the next up was one of the books I was looking forward to most reading this month, The Goblin Emperor by Katherine Addison. I'd been looking forward to reading this book for 2 years almost, and it was good. I gave it 3 stars. I did think it was probably going to get to 4 stars when I started it, but it just never did. And I think that was sort of a me problem, because this was a book that you needed sort of a notebook and notes and stopping constantly. This isn't a book that you should be reading in 2 days or 3 days. This is a book you should be reading in 2 weeks and writing copious notes, because there's just so much world building thrown at you. And I think the author even acknowledges this. She put a glossary in the beginning of the book with a bunch of names and objects that you should know. So it's like, yeah, you should be constantly referencing that glossary. You should be constantly writing down notes of like how they pronounce certain things and certain words and places that you need to know, and traditions and culture. There's just a lot of world building in this book, and it's all very, very, very good. But it's just so much, and the book isn't like super, super long, so it's a lot thrown in this book, and it's a lot. It took me to like 50% of the way through the book to get to understand most of what was happening in terms of like the world, the culture. But other than that, I think this book delivered on everything. It's about Maya, this goblin prince who becomes king after his father and brothers are tragically die, and it turns out that they were actually murdered. And the book has a murder mystery, but the story isn't about the murder mystery. That's sort of just going on in the background. The story is about how he becomes king and sort of the discrimination that's going on because he's half goblin, and the theming and the politics of becoming king. And there's just a lot of good work in here involving that, and it asks like a powerful question of, can you have friends as a king? And I think the story answers that question in a really powerful way at the end. The theming in here is perfect. And the character, Maya, is probably my second or third favorite character I read this month. She's a really good character. Yeah, so this book's good. And I think if I read this at a different time where I didn't try to cram everything in 3 days, I was trying to get through a bunch of books, I would have liked this even more than I liked it. But I still liked it a lot. 3 stars is a good book in my rating system. So yeah, this was good for me. 3 stars. Okay, the next up was The Lions of Al-Rassan by Gavriel K. I thought this book was great, 4 stars. One of the best books I've read this month. I think it was my third favorite book I read this month. Just from front to back, just really good character work, really good action, really good emotional moments. I love the prose. The poetry here was awesome. Just sort of the way that they blend historical fiction and fantasy just really worked. It was such a good blend. It's probably the best blend of the two I've ever read. Yeah, and it just had a really great ending, too. Yeah, can't say enough about this book that's positive. I did think, it was a little bit longer than it needed to be. That would be my only criticism of it, which I got 4 stars instead of 5, but it's still a great book. Okay, then we go up to the books that I read over the past 10 days that I haven't got to talk about yet on this channel, so I'm going to do that now. And the first one would be A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. Yeah, I love this book. It's a children's book, another middle grade fantasy, sort of like the Phantom Tollbooth. But it's just as great. It's 4 stars. Everything here worked. I love that this book was more like A Sorcerer's Comes to Call than Nettle and Bone. Nettle and Bone I still thought was good, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed A Sorcerer's Comes to Call. And I think this book is sort of more in the vein of A Sorcerer's Comes to Call, just for a younger audience. The magic in here is really awesome, but it's not like super defined either. It can sort of go anywhere. I love that about it. I kind of like magic systems like that, so love that here. The characters were really good and really interesting. The Duchess, the child, the gingerbread man stole the show. I thought the theming was really powerful. I thought the humor was top notch, and it had a really great climax with a really good ending, and the pacing was really great too. So yeah, 4 stars, easy for me. It's a little simple, so it's not going to quite get to the 5 stars for me range. It doesn't peak as high as a 5-star book would, but yeah, you're going to have a good time from front to back. Okay, then next up was The Blue Sword by Robin McKinley. I gave this book 2.5 stars. I thought it was just okay. It was borderline good, but it just didn't hit for me quite like I wanted it to. And I think that's because I read A Hero in the Crown first, and I just think A Hero in the Crown is just a much better book. I had sky high expectations going into this one, and it didn't quite deliver. I didn't think the characters were all that interesting. Harry, our main character, was not nearly as good a character as Erin. I didn't think the action was quite as good, although the climax was very, very good with the blue sword where she burns down the mountain and it collapses on her enemy. Love that. The world building was basically non-existent. It could have just been any desert. It didn't feel anything like the world building from the previous book, despite it being the same world, like a couple thousand years difference. Yeah, but I love parts of this book. Like, you get to hear the legend of Eowyn Firehair, which you read about in A Hero in the Crown, and I love comparing the differences between the two. Yeah, that was probably my favorite part of the book, and yeah, I thought the climax was very good too, like I said. So those 2 things stand out, but I did think that overall this book was a bit slower paced. I didn't love that. Yeah, there was a lot about this book that just kind of fell flat for me. So for me, it was just 2.5 stars. It's okay. Okay, then next up was The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons. Dragon Rider heist magic. That's all I needed to hear, and I was in. Like, I saw this book on my Libby app. I was looking through my local library's fantasy section, and I saw the cover of this, and I clicked on it. The cover looked really interesting. I was looking for standalones, And then I read the blurb, and I was like, yeah, I'm in. And yeah, it delivered on everything I wanted it to. It was just very, very fun. It's one of those books that are very fun. Don't take things too seriously, because you just shouldn't. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time if you're looking for like plot holes and stuff like that. But yeah, this book delivered on everything I wanted it to. Dragon riders, heist, magic, all of it worked really well. I did think the characters were a bit unbalanced. There were some great characters, some not so great characters. But the dragons themselves as characters really, really worked. I heard her say at the end of this book she took inspiration from, A Song of Ice and Fire and Dragon Riders of Pern. And I heard other people compare it to Fourth Wing. I think these dragons are more closer to the dragons from a Dragon Riders of Pern than they are from, like, say, Fourth Wing or from A Song of Ice and Fire. But they were still really great characters, especially the two that we get to really know well. Yeah, this book's just very fun. Did I think the pacing was a bit uneven? No, because I still read it quickly, but I thought the author made some weird decisions. Like the chapter where they're just on a flying boat. That chapter was kind of strange, but it's not that long. And then the end, we randomly switched to like another point of view in one of the chapters, which I didn't think we needed to do. But again, these are just minor quibbles. I still had a very fun time. This was a 4-star book for me pretty easily. And, you give me Dragon Riders, magic, and a heist, and I'm in every time. Okay, then I read The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown, and for a debut novel, this knocked it out of the park. I gave it 4 stars. Great magic books, great battle at the end, great character work. This had some time travel, but I didn't mind it in this book for some reason. Like, it just worked a lot better. Like, time travel very rarely works for me. This is one of the times where it did, even though I don't think it was perfect, which is why it doesn't get the 5-star nod from me, because I did think there were some plot holes with that time traveling logic, but it didn't bother me as much as it normally does, let's put it that way. And yeah, I just love the magic of this book and just the plot concept, magic books. And I thought, he delivered on that plot concept in a very satisfying way with like a very good conclusion and some like real emotional moments and some good action. And did I mention this was a debut novel? Like, yeah, just 4 stars easily. Okay, then the last up I read I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. For some reason, this was in the fantasy section of my local library. No idea why, because this is definitely not a fantasy. It's 100% a science fiction novel or even like a dystopian fiction. You can put it in either one, but it's not fantasy. But I read it thinking it was a fantasy. The best thing about it is it's quickly paced, and I think the plot concept is cool. I do think it drags a bit because there's not a lot there. There are 24 women stuck in a underground prison, and they break out, and they're just in this open environment in this like post-apocalyptic world. This is what I said when I talked about earlier, that I liked how the one book didn't give me every answer I wanted. Like the Snow Child just didn't give you a ton of answers at the end. Like it left you up to infer things on your own, but it gave you enough hints where you could infer things the right way, maybe even the wrong way. But I didn't mind that about it. I kind of liked it. This book gives you basically no hints, and you're left to guess almost every mystery on your own. And the problem is this book is about the mystery. So the fact that it doesn't answer any of the mystery questions or even lead you in a direction of where you can guess the mystery, it bothered me quite a lot. I did think the book was overly long. I mean, it's not a long book. It's only 175 pages, but nothing really goes on in this book. It didn't need to be 175 pages. So for me, this book was just 2 stars. It was okay. I didn't hate my time here. It was too short to hate. But there's just not a lot happens. The main character, quite easy to root for. I'll give you that. I really like that. And I thought the plot concept was a good idea. I just wish it was executed a little bit differently. Okay, and that was my monthly reading recap. That's 19 books. There were some great books, 1 perfect book, a lot of very good books, and then just some books that didn't land for me quite as well. But for the most part, I think this was a very good month of standalone. I really enjoyed reading those standalones, and I think I'm going to do that a little bit more next month when I read a bunch of vampire books, which I will make a TBR video for that soon. But let me know down below if you have read any of these books or what you read in September.